my first step ever. I'm always very excited to host this episode, to host this show with each and every passing episode. I can't be more happy because I find that every time I bring in some new people to share their story, and I realize that how many different ways and how many different paths there are to achieving your own success, your own goal, whatever you define it as. But one thing remains constant throughout, which is the human spirit, and that is what we celebrate over here, is to build the conviction and have actionable steps to follow through them. So please join me welcoming all the way from India someone really special, Sarika Singh. Sarika, welcome on my first step ever.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you, Ishani. Thank you for having me on your show.
It's a pleasure, and I must say that I meet a lot of different personalities. I've had the opportunity to and the honor to interview over 150 plus guest speakers on this podcast. And I welcome someone who, with you, get a very warm feeling. You're very sweet. You have a very sweet voice. So it's a very different, it's very amazing to, meet people with different sense of aura that they bring. So thank you so much for gracing this virtual studios. Now, before we
Thank
begin
you.
and know a bit more about you and your story, I'd like to share a bit about you. So Sarika Singh is an award-winning poet, author, and mentor in communication and creative writing. With a passion for language and a natural flair for connecting with children, she's been dedicated to enhancing their writing and communication skills since 2000. Wow, that's been long in this journey, 24 strong years. Wow. So, Sarika has mentored over 2,200 children globally through her workshops, helping them unlock creativity and confidence. And I think helping children, making children realize their own potential is a very noble cause, but a very challenging one indeed, I feel. And I'm very, very eager to learn that why, how you came into the space that you're in, what you're doing. We will uncover that very soon. But before that, I also like to share that Sarika has published works including poetry with Poetry Writing Made Simple and An Ode to Odes. Wow, a widely admired book. Based in New Delhi, Sarika's latest podcast on Spotify and Amazon Music continue to inspire listeners worldwide. So, Sarika, could you share the name of your podcast?
Sure. Thank you for such a lovely introduction, Ishani. Yes, my podcast is my latest love. It's all about communication. It's titled Communicate 101 Speaking Writing Tips. In
Amazing.
my podcast, I share tips and stories and strategies, among many other things, so that you can get better and better at speaking and communicating it effortlessly.
That's the top number one skill, soft skill required for anywhere. You want to
True.
do job, you want to do business, even if you want to communicate with your partner, anyone, you would need.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's a bridge builder, It's like linking hearts and minds through the magic of words. So yes,
Amazing,
communication
Sarika.
skill is a life skill.
So we are definitely going to get some practical tips out of this chat today. But before that, Sarika, as we always do in this chat that we have with our guest speakers, the honor of the episode, we would love to learn about your journey to how did you get to the point that you are today? Please take us through your early childhood days. Where were you born? What kind of people were you surrounded with? And the kind of, mindset of the people that you were surrounded with and you're growing up with.
I think, Ishani, this is a very, very interesting question. And actually, I have one question which I have not been asked before, specifically because you're talking about the mindset of people that I grew up with, because I believe that hugely impacts your personality. So, while the last 2 decades have gone in a corporate setup, all of my childhood, my entire schooling, I was surrounded by scientists and educationists. To make it simple, my dad was a coveted scientist and he retired as deputy director with the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, which is the premium body for scientists in India. So I've lived in campuses, you're surrounded by people for whom education means the world. When I look back, my childhood was filled with mindset of curiosity. My parents were the kind of people who believed the power of asking why. They never took anything on the face value. So that's what I've always grown up with. Why this? If something's happening, why? I wasn't a follow the rules blindly kind of a person because of the environment. I was more like, let's figure out why this works the way it does. So I've always been curious, I've always been a learner, and I'm still learning. These days, my daughter's teaching me how to work on Insta. I'm so bad with technology, but yes, I'm learning. I think being surrounded by mindsets, such mindsets, makes me appreciate the value of education and I think discipline, because more than anything else, discipline is extremely important if you want to focus on anything at all, whether it's football or it's writing or it's speaking or anything. You need to have a discipline in your system.
I love that, Sarika. I really love that. And you
Mm,
were right at the den of, the top minds in the country and being
yes,
education at the top front. But I like what you took out from that system, from the education system, which what you took out was the curiosity. So that became your mindset. Curiosity is such a great mindset, and I think when you see education from that point of view, education becomes fun, is because you are not taking things for as it is. So I think the curiosity angle is really good. It always leads you to another step. Also, if you can you can go on the journey of finding the answers if you have not really got it from the people that you're looking up to. But
true.
coming from that angle, Sarika, I see that you were very disciplined, you were very curious, you knew that this is your world where you gain education and there's no limits to growing in life. I think once you see your parents being in that position where they are, being a scientist is a very, I think it's a sign of the utmost curiosity, because you can only prove things, you can only accept things once you have done iterations, you have hypotheses, and you've proved
Oh,
something, you've come up with
true.
ideas.
Too
So
many questions, actually. The house was like a debate all the time. And to add to that, another aspect also added a lot to my upbringing. I was in convent school, and I was in the state of Jammu and Kashmir, and my school was run by Irish nuns. Right from the principal, even to the music teacher, my favorite sister Loyola, God bless her soul. So, mannerisms and etiquette and English was the normal way of life. And that sort of, made me more and more inclined towards it. One incident I remember, it really changed my perspective. I was in middle school, and I remember I had this teacher who was known to be tough. She was like no nonsense stuff. One day she pulled me aside and she was like, Sarika, you keep asking me a lot of questions. You always have questions. Now that's going to take you far, but you need to learn to listen as much as you speak. At first I didn't get it. I mean, wasn't asking questions such a good thing? That's what I was, always taught. But the more I thought about it, and especially now because I'm in that space, I realized she was teaching me balance. Communication isn't about talking, although my job is to talk, but it isn't about talking. It's about truly understanding the other person. So this sort of shifted my entire perspective on conversations. And I think it's a big reason for why I do what I do.
this is
That
very
teacher probably, had how much that moment stuck with me, but it really did. I'm still in touch with her. So I think whatever circumstances, whatever situations, they define your growing up years, they design your personality. And that's why working with children, I really enjoy seeing them grow and enjoy seeing them where they reach after a couple of years and in their lives.
amazing. I love the fact that you've emphasized that how you shape children while growing up, that really define their personalities when they bloom into amazing adults. And that's very true, but sadly not everyone gets that circumstances or the kind of surroundings that they are in. So people who are listening to us and they feel that they fall in that category, please do not feel bad about it. It's, I think, whenever you come to a point or in a situation you realize, okay, things have not been okay in my past. I've not had the circumstances or surroundings to actually understand who I am and become the best person that I could be and lead my life in a way that I feel secure of myself. I think this is why we are having this podcast. This is why we are having this chat, to understand from our guest speakers that how, which point in their life did they really go through such situations, and what then they did out of that, so we learned that how we can go about doing things. So Sarika, it's amazing to see that you were very disciplined, you were very curious, and you were very observant as well. But I'm not sure if you ever had a troubled teenage time or not, but this is always my next question, because a lot of us, while we're growing up, we become a bit of, rebels in a sort. Some become rebels in an extroverted way, some become rebel in a very introverted way, but because that is the kind of age where you are kind of, really fighting with who am I, what am I doing on earth, why should I listen to you, what are you saying? So did you ever have that phase even while growing up in convent?
All the time. All the
Please share
time.
something about that.
All the time. Because, so I was in Jammu Kashmir, like I mentioned, and I used to live in the campus. And that was a time when, Kashmir, the terrorism was at its peak, and there were a lot of things happening around. So, and we used to have curfew most of the time, which is like the city comes to a stop. And so, what typically happened was you used to get vacation from school, it's a chutti, it's a holiday, so you're at home. But in a campus, life was normal. We were playing, we were attending all clubs, we were doing everything apart from going to school. Now, that also made me question a couple of things, which was like, when you're living in a campus, it's a very communal kind of an environment. Nobody really has money. People have a lot of value systems, lot of IP. They don't have wealth in terms of money. So all my friends, most of my friends from school were from outside the campus, and they had a very flashy way of life, and the lifestyle was very different. And so my lifestyle was very different. So there were often these clashes. Okay, I want this, I want to go there, allow me this, allow me that. So those kind of things did happen, quite a bit of them, quite a few of them. But I think eventually you see whether if your parents have worked their way through, you automatically start respecting how they live their life and what their journey has been. My dad in particular, he, as a child, he, from class 4, he used to live in a hostel, and he used to walk 4 miles in a village setup to go to his village over the weekends. So things like that. He was one of the first people to have studied from that village. So that when
Wow.
you see that, and then him doing his PhD, him working for the United Nations, him working, having more than 100 patents, and published, more than a
More
few
than
hundred
100.
papers. Yes.
Wow.
So there was a lot of there was lots to look up to. The legacy that he left behind, we just lost him about a year ago, and the
Sorry to
legacy
hear
which
that.
he left behind was too much to really question and demand all silly things. But I think teenage, we're all excused for for doing whatever we do. Of course, you used to mind when your mom would put restrictions and not let you go out after dark, or go, don't play with the boys, play here, blah blah. Keeping that hawk's eye and all
Yeah.
those things. We all go through that, and we hate it at that point. But only when you become a mother, you become a parent, you realize, okay, we know where this is coming from.
Yes, of course, Sarika. And I mean, I love that you had inspiration just in your home, all around. I think your parents, your father showed you the possibilities of what you could achieve or what you could do, and God bless his soul. And I'm sure he's very, very happy looking up to what you have been doing. You've inspired and impacting so many children's life. So from there on, when we talk about being teenager and being kind of, started to get a taste of life and understand that who we really are, maybe, or we start having the first pseudo image of ourselves that I feel, the first images are always the pseudo images.
The keyword being pseudo,
Yeah.
because that's what it is.
And so how was from there, when you started coming to really come to full force as an adult? What was those few years, your late teens, early 20s, like coming out of your convent school? Were you clear of, the educational path that you want to take or the professional path that you want to take? If yes,
Oh,
how? And if no, how ddid you, navigate through that?
so it's a big no. It's a complete no.
All right. We
So,
all feel normal right now.
so not many people know, only my close friends know I always wanted to be an architect. So I think, when you're growing up, sometimes you have some role models. I don't know who was my role model, but I thought, I want to be an architect. And I, in fact, got some extra coaching for isometry and things like that, which I faintly remember now. So I was very clear. Okay, this is what I want. There was no plan B. And when you don't have a plan B, it's the worst scenario because plan A never happens. So one was a shock coming from a sheltered campus environment where everything was taken care of to Delhi, which was like a ocean. Suddenly you were in a pond and then suddenly you go into an ocean. So that was a complete shocker. That's one. But the second thing was that I cleared my exam, my interview, everything from the School of Planning and Architecture,
Oh,
and
wow.
I was standing with my dad to pay the fees.
That's the top school of architecture in India, by
Yes,
the way.
yes, yes. So I was standing at the counter to pay the fees, and last minute they told us that because you come from JNK and because that has a special quota, and if there's a government nominee, some student nominated by the government, then we cancel that seat. So I mean, a heart attack would be an understatement, but I had one, and I felt that okay, now my life is ended. So
This is so heartbreaking.
I mean, I can still, it still gives me goosebumps when I think about how I felt. But I think, and that's what I tell children, that whatever is destined for you is going to happen. So just have many plans. Don't be fixated on your choices. The more we are fixated on our choices, whether it comes to relationships, whether it comes to career moves, anything at all, that's when we start building the expectations and that's when we crumble and fall. So that's one thing I have learned the hard way. I'm talking very coolly about it now because it's been many, many years, couple of decades. But that point in time, it was like a, make or break moment for me.
Yeah.
And then I did my BTech, I did my MBA, typical like coming from a scientist family. So you think science is the most important thing and you don't really think about other things. So I did my BTech, MBA, followed the track, did my food engineering, joined the corporate. I've been a food veteran for over 30 years now. Been in
Wow.
brand building and brand storytelling and things like that. I'm
Wow.
still discovering what I am discovering.
We have just taken, a big jump in your life from your early 20s to you being in the corporate, working for, past 20 or so 30 as years that you mentioned. And from there, slowly you started developing the love for, communication, branding, storytelling. But I want to go back to your early 20s, just because you mentioned something and it's very important for our listeners to hear this. A lot of people might have gone through their first heartbreaks, either through professional journey or their personal relationships, if they're already whatever phase or age they're in their life. Some of them are yet to experience that. I hope some i hope some do not experience it, but I think it's impractical to. They
It's
might.
very important to actually
Yes.
experience all that.
So I want to just pause on that phase where you mentioned, and if you are comfortable speaking about it, how did you process it? Because it's inevitable for a lot of us to have gone through that or will go through that. What can you tell our listeners today, that what you feel I think how much ever someone says something, you really have to go through that pain for a couple of days, I guess. For some, it's like months. But what can you share today that they will listen to this and feel that, okay, I'm in a bad space right now, but it can work out this way, or it may work out this way? If you can share with from your experience.
I feel I'm out there to give solutions to other people and not involve them in my own problems. Having said that, while it all seems hunky dory, I've had a hugely fair share of, mental, physical, lot of challenges along the journey. So I had barely entered my 20s, and I became, I married, and I became a single mom. And so I was a single woman in her very, very early 20s, like about 21. And so India wasn't that
Not at all at that point
receptive,
in time. Yeah.
it was far more conservative than what it is. But believe you me, we are talking about conservative mindsets. I think we still have miles to go there,
Yes.
because the mindsets haven't changed much. Although there are too many people who are single now,
Hmm.
but the way we look at them, the way we deal with them is very different.
Hmm.
So whether it was working in the corporate, thanks to God, I had good mentors and good people, friends supporting me, and family supporting me, which meant the world to me.
Hmm.
Um, Alongside that, what happens is, if you're a single woman, you're asked far more questions than any other
Yes.
normal person. And there's always that blame game, there's always that fault finding in you. You always have to prove yourself, why you're right, why what you're saying, why you deserve, XYZ. So, but I think I just put myself out there, realizing that staying quiet and staying silent was only making it difficult. So there were challenges about, when I was bringing up my daughter, how I had that heart to heart talk with a little child to make her understand, to make her confident and comfortable in school, and all through her journey, communicating with my parents and making them comfortable that I'm going to be fine, don't worry. Because the minute you are single, there's all sorts of pressure around you,
Yes.
which starts to push you in a different direction that you may not be ready for. So there were all sorts of challenges. I'll give you a simple example. If you, for example, have a driver, I'm talking about India. So for those of you who are listening from other places, you might not be able to relate to it, but this is what I go through. So if I have a driver and if he's done something wrong, and why did you do this? Or, I say something to him, he will not be able to take it from a woman.
Hmm.
While if there's a man talking to him, he will be fine. There is no issue.
Yes.
But
I can totally understand this.
that male ego is a battle which, which I've fought all my life, and so I know the pain points. I've just learned to ignore them because I can't change them. So my dad, when he once he saw me very stressed about this whole thing, he says, you can't change what anybody is saying. You can just change the way you look at it. So
Yes.
just change your reaction to what they're saying. I think I kind of, kept it deep inside, and always whenever I was in doubt, I would pick on it and use it, and everything was fine. So I think it's
But
all here. Like that, communication is all here. You know,
yeah.
if you're scared to go on a stage and talk, it's all here. The crowd is not eating you up.
Nah, nah, I think first of all, I like to say thank you so much for opening up. It's not easy for anyone, and thank you for being so candid. Because now we see where your strength comes from, in the sense that that once you are in such extreme situations that no one really thinks about these things. I mean, you do think about certain challenges that one might face in life, and then you think of how we can overcome these challenges. And there's some normal challenges that everyone faces in their career, in their personal life, but something of these sort of extreme challenges that you wouldn't ever even imagine kind of thinking of that. And to be able to stand up to your own well-being, your own rights, and taking that stand in places where this is yet not that easily accepted, which is very, very, I think, kudos to you for doing that. Given that for people who are listening to us from maybe different parts of the globe, it is also for all of us to understand the perspective of like a different origins, people of different origins, and the society, or where they come up from. And I think it will be amazing, and I will be amazed to know that I know that people listening to us, they will find a lot of strength in you, that they can take the strength from your journey and they can definitely place it somewhere in their life, in whichever phase that they are in, that they can go against what the entire their society is thinking, that this is what exactly they're supposed to be doing. If something doesn't really align with you, or something doesn't really come from your heart, you would come to know this is not right for you. As you mentioned about how you look at things, that changes your response, rather than what you think of or hear people saying to you that your father told you, and you keep that very close to your heart. And that has also translated in your career of communication and storytelling, and with the children that you have helped. So I want to kind of trace our steps a little forward in your life, where you have been in this corporate sector, you've worked through, and now when did you start getting that inkling, I really like creative writing, I like communication? When did that really start for you?
Thank you for asking that. Just a couple of years ago, like I think about 2 years ago, somebody came to me and he asked me that why don't, so he offered that he would write me a conversion story. So he says, every business needs a conversion story, and I can create a very nice conversion story for you. It'll, make your business skyrocket. So I was like, I don't need a conversion story. I think, it's like a slow burn. I'm having more of a slow burn than a lightning bolt moment. So coming back to the question that you were asking, one of those days where you just feel off, you feel something's not quite clicking. I had way too many of those. I was doing everything I thought I was supposed to do, a good job, a decent routine. But deep down, I kept hearing this little voice saying, is this it? At first I ignored it. Let's be real, change is scary.
Hmm.
But by the time that inner voice kept getting louder, I wasn't just about wanting something different, but felt I was not living up to my potential. There was
Hmm.
something which I was just pushing away. And that big moment, that big move didn't happen overnight. It took a
Hmm.
lot of self reflection, a few pep talks with myself, and honestly, quite a few breakdowns. But eventually, I couldn't ignore it anymore. And then I said, all right, this is time. So back in 2000, which was, I think, about 5 years by when I was in the corporate sector, I started, because I used to enjoy writing. And so I started, helping children write stories and poems. And I would just enjoy that over the weekend. And so that sort of, people liked it. Slowly, I was called to schools to deliver something, to deliver a
Amazing.
training workshop. And so I think one thing led to the other. And but this was more like a pro bono kind of activity, very
Hmm.
little, as a profession, as a business.
Freelance in today's language.
Freelancers charge a lot, so I wouldn't say.
Okay, no freelance.
But I think I was always a teacher at heart. So people would somehow find it me very accessible, and they would come to me for help because I was in the corporate. They would come to me, okay, help me with this presentation. I can't speak, whatever. So like that, and especially because I saw a lot of people coming from top tier colleges and universities into the corporate sector, and they could not pitch for themselves. They could not present. They could not communicate what their skills are. Even if they knew the subject in a group discussion, they wouldn't know how to speak up. So there I felt that I can
Adapt.
help with that.
Hmm.
I can help there. So slowly from children, I moved to, the older kids who were going to universities, help them, create their portfolios, go for their interviews, helping these freshers who would come into the corporate, train them up so that they can do market pitches. So I think there, from there, one thing led to the other, and slowly I started, helping people with their presentations and going on the stage. In fact, the biggest in demand skill right now, everybody wants to be on the stage, but they all shy to be on the stage. It's that fear, it's that confidence speaking, it's the hesitation for filler words, all that eats them up from inside. It's like that huge demon which they believe exists, who actually doesn't exist. So now I try help them fight this terror, of presenting. So I think with children, I started, and because I could deal with children, I could
Could deal
slowly
with anyone.
graduate. I could slowly graduate into the older ones, and
Yeah.
people found it meaningful. So I think that was my kick. When people would appreciate, when they would look up to me, they would come to me for solutions. Even my podcast now, I base my podcast episodes based on the questions I receive from people. Okay, I need help in this. Can you answer this question? I had this issue you know, in my office recently, and I didn't know how to deal with it. So I try to build my episodes around the questions that people ask.
I think I can hear that, how you gradually progress to where you are today, and I can see very organic and natural way of progression to who you really wanted to be, because it was a small voice inside your mind, your heart. So I think for people who are listening to us, if I can just contextualize this for everyone, so it's more like, if you have some sort of inkling in your mind, and it's like always coming back to you, back to you, back to you, it is for a reason. And I think either you give in into it, or you give up of not listening to it. It's better to give in into the voice, because then you can see, once you start slowly taking small step towards what you want to do, you reach where you really are,
Yeah.
you, because you're a unique person, you have your unique skill sets, and if you are having that sort of inkling, it's because for a reason that you can do that thing best in your own way. And also in the environment and the vicinity and the space that you are, there might be people doing similar thing in their own unique ways in the places that they are, but you are here to kind of, impact the lives that you can in your surroundings to begin with. And if you have that talent, if you have that unique ability, then you try that, and you don't need to kind of go full out from the very beginning. You don't really need to quit your job. I mean, that has become like a fashion these days,
I
where
couldn't. I
okay,
couldn't.
I mean, if
You
you
know,
don't feel like, you really don't have to, but if you do feel like, go, because that's your inklings. I think to each their own. So, Sari, we've come to like the close, kind of very close to the wrapping up of this episode, and it's been really amazing chatting to you and understanding your journey from your very beginning. I think you have done lots of amazing stuff to begin with, and I love the fact that your one very, very cherished thing that you wanted to do in your life, your goal, it did not work out. You took your own time to, process that thing out. As you mentioned, it was not very easy for you, but then you did take up other things, which could help you, progress in life, help you become financially independent. And then you started also listening to your voice and started something out of it, and now here we are. So please tell us, that the amazing business, your own initiative that you have now taking forward, what is your initiative all about, and who you are helping, and yeah, how are you doing that?
I love this question. When somebody asks me, okay, what are you doing now? Because I feel I'm really excited to be in this communication coaching space. There's magic in human connection. And we're in this constant flux where human connection is evolving with technology, but yet everything is about people. It's still about people. It's still about that human touch, no matter how much AI is around you. So while I'm in here every day, I get to help people bridge gaps while I work with HR teams and companies to understand what their team needs and deliver for them. I realized that there are gaps people didn't even know existed. So whether it's between themselves or, you know, there's something very, very powerful about helping someone. And that is the driving force which drives me to what I do. I
I
know it
love
must
that.
small because I went very organically, like you mentioned. So there is no funding coming. There's no VC sitting on my head. It's a small company. It's we learn, we grow. What makes me different from anybody else, any other communication skills coach? There might be so many in the world. What defines me is I don't have a one size fits all course. There's nothing like there's this one course, please take it up. This is what I'm selling.
Hmm.
No, it's not that. So when I meet an HR team of a company or any group, I understand what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, where the gaps are, what needs to be bridged, and where they want to be. So everything is customized, mind to, we go from, lesson to lesson, we go from day to day of the workshop. And so many times if there's a 15-day workshop and I've sort of designed it, pre-designed it, there's so much evolution which keeps happening depending on what happened that day, that the entire course changes.
Amazing.
So it's a lot of effort, but then after that, they're so happy about it. They're so satisfied, and they find it meaningful, and that's the biggest kick. That pushes me for the next job and the next job and the next job, and thanks to God, people connect with me from everywhere in the world. They reach out to me on my website or my podcast, now also on my Insta handle. So everything is like Communicate 101.
Wow. I think as long as you have people connecting with you from all across the world, you cannot call yourself small in any ways. So thank you, Sarika, for being
Thank
here, sharing your story, being so candid, opening up to us. I'm sure that has opened a door of people's hearts somewhere to, sit and understand that the challenges everyone goes through and their own challenge, and to forgive themselves, to take up the stand for themselves and go ahead in life, because there's lots that one can achieve in their life. Who would have imagined that, that when once that your dream of being an architect broke, and now you're here having your own
you.
business, connecting with people, impacting. There is ways that you can change your present, your future, only if you take a stand for yourself and keep listening to your voice. So thank you so much, Sarika, for being on my first step ever, being so kind. I will leave all the show notes and the links in the show notes below. So please do check Sarika out if this interests you. I'm sure that her communication style and her sweet voice must have struck a chord with you. So please do that. And before we take your leave, I request my guest speakers to leave our listeners with a quote or a saying that they really resonate with.
Okay, I would actually like to say one little thing to the entire audience here. It's not a quote, it's something I tell everyone. Communication skills are fully learnable. Many times you see people who are gifted, who's a born speaker, he can, he's the life of the party, and you feel shy, you feel that I can't do this. No, you can do it too. Just embrace the awkwardness, just listen more than what you can talk, and be unapologetically curious. You can master anything. It's like swimming, it's like dancing. Communication skill is learnable. And listen to my podcast, give it a try, and you will better your communication skills. I'm sure of that.
Here you go. That's well said by Sarika. Do listen to her podcast if you want to improve more on your communications. And do listen to this podcast if you want to hear such inspiring journeys. So thank you so much for all my listeners for tuning into this podcast. A huge thanks to Sarika for being on this podcast. And as I always tell my listeners, start believing in yourself and keep believing in yourself. See you next